All right, so welcome to the third part of the exercise of team build today. Today we'll focus on learning a skill, the skill of design thinking, and use it for solution building. So as you're taking part in the TiE University hackathon, hope the early morning inspiration helped get the energy levels up. I hope the networking helped you meet new friends and find new skills as you work towards your solution building. And then now we have Summer Reeves joining us to enlighten us about the design thinking methodology and how we could use that to come up with some amazing solutions for the global challenges that you're being asked to solve. So with that, I want to hand it over to Summer. Thank you so much for making your Friday available to us, and you are good to go whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, go
All
ahead.
right, perfect. All right, well, thank you so much for having me and welcome everyone. Today I'm excited to talk about design thinking and how we use design thinking to solve real-world business challenges. So before we dig into that, I'd like to just share a little bit about myself and kind of what I do. So my background is really over 13 years of experience helping businesses to streamline and reimagine themselves through the use of user-centered design and design thinking methods. I've done service design, product design, user-centered design, and all these things in order to really solve business challenges. So as of the latest thing that I've been doing is really being a leader in innovation for Accenture, which is one of the largest consulting firms in the world. And my teams there connect with clients on a daily basis to really understand current pain points and challenges and immerse our clients in that art of the possible and really show them how technology might be applied to reimagine the future of their business. And so with that, I also like to do a lot of other things. And so not only do I work for Accenture within our innovation area and leverage design thinking on a daily basis in order to drive innovation, but I'm also a business owner myself. So I actually own a business called 1348, where I use user experience design to create micro experiences for clients to really create really micro experiences and moments that matter to really drive surprise and delight in their special moments and special events that they have. And lastly, for the community, I am also on the board of directors for TXRX Labs, which is a makerspace in Houston's East End, which is actually about to move into the East End makerspace. And as part of that, it's going to have 300,000 square feet of innovation space, where TXR's Labs will have 50,000 square feet, where they have a wood shop, machine shop, art spaces, electronics, 3D printers, laser cutters, and they teach how to use all these different things. And so they're really focused on being able to bring those unique kind of skill sets and tools and technology that people typically don't have access to that local community and to students, and also to people looking to shift into maybe a different area of the workforce or reskill themselves to get back into the workforce. So really exciting kind of community space to be a part of. And so I've really focused most of my career on really trying to, work with my hands, try to understand different capabilities, different approaches to things, and then being able to leverage that to apply it to solve challenges in new and innovative ways. Now, what does all that mean for design thinking? So as far as design thinking is concerned, there is a framework for design thinking, which I like to leverage and like to talk through, called the double diamond approach. And that's what you see here on the screen. And with the double diamond approach, you want to first start with a challenge. And luckily for you guys, you already have, as part of the TiE Hackathon, some challenges outlined for you that you simply just need to choose from, right? So once you've selected that challenge area, you go into that first of the double diamonds, and that is our problem space. Now, whenever we talk about design thinking, to back up slightly, it's interesting to think about the history of design thinking, where it came from. Like most methods and most approaches, it evolved over time through research, through application, through iteration, and lots of different people contributing to what design thinking is today. But one of the more interesting things that as part of that kind of evolution was a study done at a university where someone took a group of designers and they took a group of science-minded students and they gave them a challenge. And for that challenge, they basically gave them a whole bunch of blocks and told them that they needed to solve a certain challenge. And what was interesting is the way they observed the difference between problem solving between designers and between scientists. So the scientists got in the room, right, and they talked about all the different approaches, all the different ways that they could solve the problem. They discussed it, they kicked it back and forth, and then at the end, they built one item. Now, the designers, when they came into the room, they came in and they immediately threw something together and they said, nope, that didn't work. Here's how we can make it better. And they built something else. And they said, nope, we can make it better. And they tore it down and they built again. And so you saw a very different way of identifying problem and solutioning a problem between the two different mindsets. And that was a key component that got built into the framework of design thinking. And we see that in that second diamond, which is in the solution space, where we ideate, we prototype it, we test it out, and then we reiterate and do it over and over again. So as we talk about design thinking today, we're going to dig into these 5 key areas: understanding and defining in the problem space, and then within that solution space, ideation, prototyping, and testing. Okay. Now, when we talk about that problem space, one of the things that I often see with people digging into trying to solve a challenge is they'll jump right to the solution. So everybody wants to get to that solution space, right? And they don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the problem space. But that problem space is so important to getting the right solution, right? So the better we understand, right, the better we define the problem that we see, the better that we're going to come up with really good solutions that solve the problem the right way. So let's talk about that a little bit. So when we talk about understanding, right, we want to make sure that we understand the subject material. We understand the possible solution areas of the technologies that we could leverage as part of it. We want to understand the people that are impacted by that challenge or problem, right? And you really do need to spend a significant amount of time and effort doing this in order to really and truly understand. And as you can see in this double diamond, there's a diverge, right? So we go wide. We want to really understand the full landscape of what's going on. And then you see that double diamond coming down into converge. And that's where we start defining it and really identifying, you know, what's the user approaches and the journeys that they're taking. Who are those people that are impacted, and really defining them and understanding them. What is the insights that we identified from our research that are really important that we keep in mind? And so we go out and then we come back in and we kind of narrow things down. Then in the middle, before we go into that solution space, we see a reframe the problem. This is also a really important part that a lot of times people skip, okay? Because when you're given a challenge or a problem initially, sometimes it's not the right problem, right? So as we go into that problem space and work on understanding and defining what that looks like, we may get to a point where we say, you know what, this actually, the challenge or the problem we've been given isn't actually the problem. Maybe it's a symptom of the problem. And maybe if we dig down, there's a different root cause. And if we solve that, we would better solve the problem. Okay. And so it's always good before we start going into the solutioning to really take a stop and really consider what is that challenge, and do we need to reframe it and think about it in a different way before coming up with ideas?
Summer, I just want to give you a heads up. You did ask me to let you know when the wind gets a little too heavy. It is getting a little too heavy and a little harder to hear you. If you could in any way fix that.
Is that any better at the moment?
It is. There seems to be a light ringing that comes in the back. Very little, but if there's any way, I know you have two mics there.
I can try unplugging
Anticipating
my
wind.
headset. I can try unplugging my headset and see, oops, if
It's better now, actually. So
is it only doing it when I talk?
yeah.
Okay, I apologize for the technical difficulties here. It would not be a virtual meeting without technical challenges. So let me unplug this real quick and see if my computer mic does a better job here real quick.
We could try. No price. All right. So as Summer is fixing the issue there with the audio, I think this is this mindset that she's brought up could be applied for anything, right? For any industry, for any uh, real life problem, even in technically relationships, right? So it's a mindset. When you talk about design thinking, it's a mindset that you could really evolve yourself around, and any challenge you're faced with, if you take the time of the two diamonds, it's understanding that problem and then building solutions around it. So I'm a fan of this graphic where notice you're spending equal amount of time in defining the problem and the problem set, and then as much time in solution building and the solution. But a lot of times people, they say solutions are dime a dozen, which means it's harder to know what to solve for. Because if you knew what the problem is, then people will give you solutions left and right. So a lot of people think that innovators are the ones who just focus on the solutions, but actually they don't. They focus more on the problem first. So all right, Summer's back. We're going to give this a shot again, and whenever you are able to, Summer, feel free to. But I do want to confirm I'm not hearing anything. So I cannot hear you. Yeah, I'm not able to hear you. So you may have to do that one more time. But so. Right next to the mic, you have the ability to choose different. I know you remove the headset, and now the computer mic. Nope, not hearing you. I wish I can lip read though. That would be cool. We could even go with sign language, right? Those are skills. Those are skills. The more skills you have, the better you could solve. All right, so we'll just see. We could take a quick break as well if needed, but anyhow, I just want to finish my thought there that it's all about defining the problem before solving it. If you solve for problems without having any definition, then you're trying to find a market with your product. What you want to do is find a gap in the market where there is a need in the market and then solve for that. Much more likely to be a successful entrepreneur or an innovator if people already agree that the problem exists, and then you're building a solution for it, and it's an easier sell because now they're likely to pay for it. If you find a new solution and there's not a market for it, even though it may be the best idea in the world. Just think about Google Glass at one point, right? Really cool idea, but the market isn't ready for it. The people aren't ready for it. It wasn't a problem that someone was willing to pay for, and it doesn't adapt and it doesn't grow. So what I like about design thinking and the two diamond slides there is that you're emphasizing as much time in problem definition, really spending time to empathize with the user, the problem that the user's having, or the company's having, or the challenge of that company. So a lot of you know, for TiE University, and I'm going to take this opportunity to just go back to our TiE University hackathon page and remind everybody here, as we're working towards the global hackathon. If you have not already, invest some time in looking at the global challenges. So let me go to the actual hackathon page. So when you click on register, it takes you to the hackathon page, and then when you scroll down, you've got these challenges, right? So here you've got 20 challenges. Notice when you click on one of them, it will give you a much more in-depth about who the sponsor is and what is the description, what are they trying to do, and what kind of solutions they're trying to build around. I will share with you that some of them are very specific of an ask. So these are actual customers, so these are companies asking for real solutions, and those can lead to internships and jobs if you have the skill sets to solve them. And then some of them are asking for more generic things. They're looking for more of those thinkers and innovators where they're thinking outside of the box. So they're not asking for as specific of a ask. So what you want to do is really find. Samir, you're back, and I hear you. So
Yes,
I'm gonna
found.
pass it on in a second. But so what you want to do is really spend more than a glance at this solutions, at the problem set, and make sure you really truly understand what the market gap is. Then start ideating and go to the second diamond, as Summer said, and solution building. Don't throw your solutions at the problem set. Understand the problem first, then build your solution. And maybe you already have a good solution, but don't go the backwards. Summer, I'm going to pass it back to you. It sounds like you've got the mic working.
Yes.
And I'm going to go ahead and make that primary. I'm going to remove my screen here.
Perfect.
Take it away, Summer.
Awesome. Sorry about that, everyone. I did find a new mic, which is much better. So awesome. All right. So to just summarize back really quickly, just to get us back on track here. So we talked about the challenge. We talked about the problem space. Now and then we reframed the problem once we better understood the problem. Now we want to go into the solution space. Now, when we get into that first portion, which is ideation, right? A lot of times what I'll see is, as we were just hearing, a lot of times people want to jump to one solution really quickly. But if you notice, the diamond is diverging again, which means we want to go wide and we want to come up with lots of ideas. And even better, we would like to get input and ideas from other people. That's always a really great idea, especially people that are impacted or very knowledgeable about the problem. So here's a great example that I love to talk about. So there was a manufacturing company, a toothpaste manufacturer, and they had a problem. Right? They kept having empty toothpaste boxes that were getting shipped out. Okay. And so they got their engineers together and they said, okay, how might we solve this problem? And so think about that for a second. So think about all the different ways that we could solve the empty toothpaste getting shipped out from the manufacturing line. All right. So the engineers sat down, they thought about it, and they said, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a scale, right, as part of the manufacturing line. So as it's coming down the conveyor, it's going to pass through a scale, it's going to weigh it, and we know the weight of full versus empty, right? And so if it's an empty box, what we're going to do is we're going to auto shut down the line. We're going to do a huge buzzer so that people know, and someone on the line are going to come over and take the empty box off, right? Solved. Everyone patted themselves on the back. They're super happy. They spend thousands of dollars implementing the solution, retrofitting the manufacturing line, and put it into place. So a couple weeks later, the engineers are looking at the data, and lo and behold, 0 empty boxes being shipped out. They're like, awesome, that fixed the problem. We're amazing. Our idea was fantastic. But then they look into the data a little bit closer, and what they see is the alarm was getting triggered a good bit, like the same amount as before, the first week or so of implementing it, but then the alarm notification went down to 0, and yet they were still doing no shipments of empty boxes. So perplexed, the engineer goes down to the floor and takes a look and sees that the line workers have set up a giant box fan underneath the graded conveyor belt right before the scale. And he goes over and he's like, why have you guys done that? Well, what was happening was it was really, really annoying to the users on the line. Every single time an empty box would go into that conveyor, it would shut down their production. It messes with their productivity, this really loud, annoying alarm. So what they did to fix the problem is they simply took a $25 box fan, put it underneath the conveyor, and the box fan was strong enough to blow the empty boxes off the line, right? So this is one of my favorite examples of brainstorming, right? Because it really showcases the fact that to every individual, to every for every hammer, everything's a nail kind of situation, right? Engineers are going to think about things from an engineering perspective. Some other group is going to think about it from their perspective. So it's always a really good idea to get people for different perspectives and different mindsets and different backgrounds in the room, because they're going to approach solving in a different way, right? So for example, in this particular story, right, if they had brought people from the line into this in the beginning as part of the brainstorming process, they probably would have come up with that idea, right? And so they would have saved themselves thousands and thousands of dollars with a very simple solution. And I think there's a couple things to learn from that story. Not only the value of bringing in people that are impacted by the solutions that you're putting into place, right? But also the fact that it's not always an overly complicated, over-engineered, over-technical solution that's best. Sometimes there's really simple and easy solutions to our problems. And so as you're kind of thinking about it, and as you go into that ideation phase and you're really diverging and coming up with all these different ideas, think about it from perspectives of, if we spent 0 money, if we had unlimited money, if, we did nothing technical, if it was, so think about it from different perspectives so you can think about different ways that you can solve the problem. Now, once we go into that, we now go into prototyping, which is kind of in the middle and maybe starting to converge down a bit. We've identified an idea that we're interested in, and we want to bring that to life. Now, there's a couple reasons why we prototype, okay? We prototype because by creating a visualization of our idea, not only are we able to better define and refine our idea ourselves, but we're also able to share that idea. Because if I explain something to you, if I give you this giant description of this idea that I have, right, and I just use words, you're going to have one visualization of that in your mind, and I'm going to have a different one, and someone else is going to have a different one, okay? But if I create a visualization, now we're all on the same page. We're seeing the same thing. We're talking about the same thing. And you can really get good feedback. You can test it, which is that last piece, right? You can get feedback from people. You can walk through it in detail and see where you're missing things. Now, the key thing that's not showing on this graph, but is very important for the design thinking process, is the circular portion of it. So when we get to test, right, sometimes our idea fails. Sometimes there's ways we can improve it. But the key thing is not holding on to an idea so strongly, not getting so passionate about your idea that you're not willing to throw it away. Okay, because if we get to the end, the users say we don't like it, it won't work, blah 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 blah, right? You need to be willing to say, let's start over and try again. All right, and that's an important part of the process before you get to actually shipping out a finalized solution. Now, I know we were talking about, this a good bit, but as we mentioned before, you guys already have your challenge areas set. And so you're going to be able to come in here and choose one. Now, as we talked about with the fact that in the problem space, you really need to understand it. One thing to consider is as you're choosing your challenge areas, is there an area in here that you're already knowledgeable about from a topic perspective, from a industry perspective, from a technology perspective? Are there things you're passionate about and really want to dig in and research more on? Because you need to become very intimately familiar with these things. And so the more information you already have about the topic or the area, that's going to give you a little bit of a leg up and get you a little bit further ahead. So something to maybe consider. Now, as you get to that idea phase, what does a good idea look like? All right, so there's 3 key factors that you always want to consider when evaluating the idea that you're thinking about moving forward with. Number 1, is it desirable? Okay, you can create the best idea ever, but if people don't like it, they're not going to use it, right? I don't know how many companies I've worked with where they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to create this product, and then they go to implement it within their organization, and people hate it. They refuse to use it. They refuse to move over, and those projects fail. They end up wasting all of that money, all of that time, and it's just disastrous. And this happens constantly because they don't put humans at the center of the design process and ensure that not only making sure that it'll be useful and something that they want, but also make sure that they're brought along on the ride, so that they're invested in that. Secondly, is it feasible? So can we actually do it, right? Now, here's the key thing. There's 2 different spectrums when we talk about feasibility. One is coming up with something that is literally impossible. Technically, it's not feasible. So I have an engineering friend who works in innovation and had a startup, someone working on a startup product come to them, and they said they basically were trying to create a type of kind of like rocket ship, but the design that they were set on that they wanted was literally broke physics, like literally impossible. So you have that side where it's just not possible. But then you also have the other side, which I actually see a lot more of with companies. And that is that they don't know what is feasible, right? And so they actually hold themselves back. What I'll hear a lot of times is people say, well, we tried that 5 or 10 years ago, and it didn't work. So we're going to avoid that. But the problem is technology is expanding exponentially and so quickly. And so things that weren't feasible 5, 10 years ago are feasible today or are going to be feasible tomorrow. And so it's really important to make sure that you really do some research and understand the technology that's out there and available to use, what the capabilities of it are, and how you can best leverage it. Now, lastly, we want to talk about business viability. So should we do it? Now, for any business that you're working with, you can humans will want a button that when you press it gives them $1,000, right? Technologically, that's very feasible. Business viability wise, they'll go bankrupt in a day, right? So it's like you really have to make sure that you are working on something that has a good business case, right? It's something that is going to help make them money. It's going to position them better in the market. It's going to save them money. And so really looking at those different aspects. All right, now let's talk a little bit about about using this design thinking framework. So when we talk about the understand, right? So when we talk about understanding, we really want to make sure that we have that we're doing our proper research. I apologize. Give me 1 second. My computer is about to die. So when we talk about research, there's a couple different areas of research that we want to be able to dig into. One is around ethnographic research. And so this is where we do interviews, we do observations, we do contextual, inquiry, immersion. So these are all different areas that we can dig into. Next up, we have participatory research. And this is where we talk about being able to bring in users and actually doing things like workshops where you can get really great ideas. This could even be something like just having some different friends or different ideas during the, sorry, 2 seconds. Okay, participatory research. So this is where you could do things like bringing subject matter experts in, being able to talk to them about their background, their ideas, being able to dig into technical areas of expertise. And so this is where you can really learn and really be able to dig into those areas to better understand it. Next up, we have evaluative research. All right, so this is things where we might do, let's say you have a challenge area where it's a product and we're trying to solve a challenge within that product. This is where we can do testing with our users. One of the things I really like to do is actually have a user testing something and they actually go through and they think out loud everything that they're considering, right? And so they're going to go in and say, you know, I'm clicking on this button, but I don't understand what this button does, right? Or, oh, I clicked on this and I really thought it would do something else. And so this gives you a really good understanding of the inner workings of what they're doing and really better understand what they're thinking as they use a product. Heuristics reviews, those are things where you actually do a user experience review of a product. We can do critiques, user usability. Now, one thing that's not here that is really important from the research phase is something we talked about earlier, and that's you just doing your own research. Get on the internet, research different articles. As part of the challenge areas, to pull that back up, they've already given you some resources and reference materials. So dig into that really well. Think about who are the subject matter experts and do you know anyone in these fields? A really good idea is you guys are students. People like to help students. So you have a leg up here. You can actually go and get on, say, LinkedIn and go and ping people that are in technology areas that you're interested in as part of your solution or part of this challenge area. Ping people that are in this industry, right? And ask them, hey, do you have a couple minutes for an interview? I'm working on a hackathon, I'm working on a challenge, and I'm trying to better understand this technology. I'm trying to better understand this industry or problem area. They will help you. And that's a really great way to get insight and make sure that you're better understanding the problem. All right. So we talked about all these different areas that you can dig into, doing interviews. That's going to be one of the easier ways for you to probably get some of this information. You can also do things if you're working with lots of different people and trying to get a wide swath of information from users. You could do things like surveys. Personally, when you're doing research, I'd say surveys are the kind of lowest common denominator. You'll get a lot of information, but you're not going to get a lot of depth. With interviews, you can ask follow-up questions. You can ask why. You can get a lot of detail and insight from them. The best type of research that you can do is actually like shadowing. And so actually following people around in their day-to-day process. So if you were actually able to go and like, say, follow someone that's within the challenge area. So say you're trying to improve a process or trying to come up with a new solution for an area, being able to see what they do and be able to see their day-to-day work is hugely, hugely helpful and one of my favorite ways to do research. All right, now let's dig into define. So what are some ways that you can work on doing definition? One of the things is just around synthesis, right? So we talked about all this research that we did, but now we really need to refine it down and document it so we can really understand what we've learned, right? So we can do that through being able to do like stakeholder mapping, which is just identifying all the different user groups and how they connect to one another and who's impacted by it, both intimately and kind of more not as substantially, but lightly as it kind of stakes out. You can do persona and user segmentation mindsets. We'll show you some examples of that in just a second. But those are really focused on being able to define your users so that you really intimately understand who you're designing for, which is incredibly important. And then lastly here is journey mapping, right? So if you were to follow someone, if you're doing interviews, understanding the steps they take as part of the process, understand what's working well, what's not working well, what technology is being utilized at each of those steps, what are the service components as part of those steps, things like that. We also want to understand the problem and the challenge. Remember, we want to kind of get to that reframing phase. So what is that problem? Do we need to reframe it? What's the root cause? Asking why. So until you can't ask why anymore, that's when you've hit your root cause. And then really, again, thinking about what's that value case, what's that business case, to make sure that you understand what a business would be looking for as part of the solution as you go into ideation. So let's look at some of these examples. Now, when we talk about like personas and mindsets and things like that, really understanding your users, there's lots of different ways that you can approach this. You can go and Google these and actually see all the different ways that you can do this. And it's not about doing things in a specific way or using a specific template. It's about making sure that you're documenting your information in a way that's useful to you and your team if you're working with a team. And so you can see here's an example there, here's another example. And it's really just about defining that and defining the description of who would be using this, what are some of the core pieces of information that are important to your design process, and things like that. And then here's some examples of like journey maps. Again, this is the same thing. You can design these in very different ways, but the key thing is really just to map this in a way that you understand the process, you understand who's involved in the process, and you understand what are the kind of highs and lows, what's working well, what are the areas of opportunity, what are the pain points, because designing innovative solutions and designing really great solutions is about solving those pain points and really capturing those highs, fixing the lows, capturing the highs. And so you can see here some different ways that you can map that out. This is also something that you can go and do some Googling, get some examples of what these look like. And it's about designing it in a way that's useful for you. All right, so next up, let's talk about ideation. So how do we do that? How do we find that big idea? So with that, like we said, we can do some brainstorming activities. We could run some workshops and bring lots of people together, even just an informal group of people. Get some of your friends together and just pitch out the problem, see what they come up with, have some discussion. Evaluating, remember that 3-step portion. Is it desirable? Is it feasible? Is it viable? Do they meet these criteria? Are there specific criteria that the challenge that you selected, the company that posed the challenge, are there specific criteria that they're looking for? Making sure you're evaluating against that as well. And then also being able to just get some user feedback on your ideas. So maybe you come up with a whole bunch, maybe you refine it down to a couple, and then get some feedback and thoughts before picking your final one. So one of the things that we use a lot of times when we're running design thinking workshops is we actually do something called Crazy Eights. So this is where we get some sticky notes, or you can get a piece of paper and fold it in like 4s, where you get like 8 little creased lines, like the picture here. And you just have 8 minutes to come up with eight different ideas. And this is a really great rapid way to make yourself think about lots of different things. So again, as we talked about, don't jump too quickly to the solution you're going with. Spend some time going wide, thinking about all the different areas of opportunity, and then narrow it down after that. Round robin, this is something we'll often do with a group of people. So this is a really great way of keeping yourself from getting too comfortable with a single idea. And you do that through group feedback and through a group coming up with the idea together. So basically you come up with the idea, then you pass it to someone else and they break it. So they tell you all the things that they think are wrong with it, all the ways it'll fail. Then you pass it to the next person, and they read the idea, read all the problems with it, and they redesign it. And they say, let's do it in a different way, and they design it out. And so by doing a process like that, maybe getting some friends, or if you're working in a team, doing this can really help the group come to a consensus with a really good idea and really think about what's wrong with your idea and ways that you need to improve on it. Prototyping. So how can you prototype? There's lots of different ways. There's things you can do with storyboarding, where you actually take the people that you're going to be presenting your idea to and walk them through a story of how we'll use the solution, give some visuals, images, tell the story underneath. You can do diagrams. So you can see here is kind of an app flow diagram where they're actually mapping out the process flow. You can do user flow diagrams. You can do paper prototypes. You can do a physical prototype if you're actually building out something physical. You can do, if you're doing an app, you can actually do app like mock-ups and wireframes. So there's lots of different ways that you can do this. And for a lot of the challenges, as I was looking through, they'll actually give you some suggestions on different ways that you can provide visualization. But use the prototyping not just for what you submit as far as your solution, but also consider it as a way to visualize and then get feedback, right? We want to do that first. And that's what we talk about in testing. Get the feedback. It's so important, right? Because a lot of times you have so much information because you've done all this research, right, on the front end. And so you're so intimately familiar with it, then when you get to the solution, sometimes you skip things or you miss things or you don't describe it well because you already have that information and background. So giving it to someone fresh to take a look and provide you feedback is absolutely critical and can really give you some fantastic feedback on how you can improve and really refine your idea before submitting it over. All right. So those are all the different things that you can do as part of the different kind of steps within that design thinking process. There's a million more, right? These are just some examples. I pulled some of the things that myself and my teams use a lot of times, but there's a lot of other resources out there for you to take a look at if you want to dig in even further or learn more about design thinking, learn more methods, more capabilities. The way I always talk about design thinking with my team and with people that I'm kind of training up or teaching about design thinking is when you look at all the different methods and capabilities that are out there, there's hundreds, right? And more being created every day. It's really about understanding the why. Right? It's really understanding what is it you're trying to accomplish? What is it you're trying to understand? What are you trying to do? And then taking a framework, taking a method, designing your own method in order to get yourself there, right? And all these different things that are out there that can seem very overwhelming are really just tools in the toolbox, right? And so don't get overwhelmed with that. Just make sure that you're kind of really focusing on understanding, then moving into solutioning. And that understanding part is where people a lot of times skip, and that can really trip you up. So if you do want to dig in more, here are some resources for design thinking. Stanford is a huge name in design thinking, so you can go and check them out. Luma Institute and IDEO are both also huge design thinking firms, which have a lot of great resources available that you can go and dig into. If you want to learn more about user experience or the service design area, Nielsen-Nelman Group is a big name in that. Usability.gov also has some great resources, and interactiondesign.org also has some great free resources available. If you want to dig in more locally and meet with people who do this type of thing, or want to find people that are also passionate about this area, General Assembly does a lot of classes and meetups. Obviously, right now, more virtual than in person, but they are still doing some things. Practice Makes, meetup.com, you can find some things there. And then you can also check out some of the latest trends from Accenture through Fjord Trends, which is our design and innovation focused trends, and then our Accenture technology vision that we put out every year talks about kind of the latest and greatest and where technology is going. So with that, I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. I do apologize for all the technical issues. One of the fun parts of the virtual environment that we are in now. But it's been a pleasure to share all of this with you. And if you have any questions or anything, I'm happy to have you reach out and talk more about it.
Excellent. Wow, Summer, you were like exactly 45 minutes of the recording, so you did great. I'm going to stop the recording for any Q&As, but Summer, I just want to thank you from TiE University for sharing this knowledge with us, and certainly the recording we will be sharing with the participants, those who are here and can go back to it and look at it. Those who are not here and have registered for the TiE Hackathon, they'll also get a chance to learn from your wisdom. So thank you, Summer, for the time today and the webinar. Thank you. So recording will stop, and then we can take any questions.